What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi back with my man Eric Sheets Haber. We are on day a million of the quarantine. And, here we are on, I believe it's a Tuesday. Feels like a Tuesday. And we have had some different things going on. We wanted to touch base with you guys and just sort of let you know what we've been up to. Also, be happy to hear about anything you guys want us to talk about. But Sheets, what's it like on your end? And then we'll transition into some of the things we've been doing.
Yeah, so I guess we'll do a coronavirus update first. As far as like personal coronavirus stuff, I've had no new cases, you know what I mean, in my circle of friends within the last, actually for 2 weeks now. You know, like everybody that I knew that had it got it in that first wave before all the social distancing started, honestly. So that's good news. In addition to that, you know, it's obvious, this is the way math works, that, you know, the rate of infection is going down, the number of infections are going down, and which, you know, makes a lot of sense considering that, you know, a lot of people got it and a lot of people, and we've been doing a, you know, C+ job of social distancing, we'll say that. It's good enough to stop what could have been like a enormous disaster in the first realm. And so now, what's the thing that's going on, at least around here, and probably more out there as well, is this discussion of to what degree and in what form does the relaxation of the social distancing rules kind of come into play. You know, people start talking about, they phrase it as, we want, how are we going to reopen? You know what I mean? Like, or reopen the country. I think it's a little disingenuous to say it that way. You know what I mean? Because, you know, plenty of businesses have been going on, plenty of business being done. People are getting stuff done online or whatever it is. So to couch what's been going on as a reopening of the country is a little, I don't want to say dramatic, but a little disingenuous. But yeah, I mean, the putting the non-essential businesses back to work. When I say that, I mean like just saying that they're encouraged to go back to work, because no one's, you know what I mean? Like this is not a society where they can actually force someone to do anything. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
so it's been kind of like very firm recommendations, to put it that way. And, you know, and it's a very tough call that, contrary to what Mr. Trump says, does have to be done on a state-by-state basis. In some places, it could be kind of on a regional basis. Like, I don't know if you follow this, but like in the New York area, it's not the same as California, because New York is kind of considered as part of like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. They all kind of operate in the same economy, because there's all these commuters that go from Pennsylvania to New York and Connecticut to New York and New Jersey to New York. So what they do is they're trying to like get all together and come up with some idea that, you know, to affect everybody or nobody, you know, all together. Because from a big geographical perspective, it's not as big, you know, as one state as California is. So California can kind of govern on their own, sort of, where New York, New Jersey, Connecticut all have to kind of work together. So it's a really, really screwed up situation, because, you know, you could argue that New York and this area is one of the top 2 economies that people would love to get back going, yet at the same time, it's probably the one in the most danger of what could happen if they do it too early. You know, so it's really interesting to me, you know, this push and pull between, you know, we'd love to, you know, hey, I'd love to go to a Yankee game. It'd be great. I'd love to be able to send my kids out, whatever. But, you know, it's like some people are saying, if you do it too soon and you do it too poorly, and then you get hit with a second wave that made the whole thing freaking worthless, I mean, you're going to kill yourself. You know what I mean? And I have to say that, you know, as much as Trump and the governors and all this stuff you can criticize or whatever it is, it's a really, really tough call, you know, and it's very easy, not easy, but to the intellectuals on Twitter go and say, oh, you got to do this, you can do this, you can do this. But when it's actually your decision, right, to put in place for hundreds of millions of people or even tens of billions of people, it's rough, man. It's because once you set it in motion, see, this is the difference, in my opinion, between someplace like this and someplace like Singapore, South Korea, whatever. Singapore, South Korea, whatever, they had it under control, so they relaxed things, and then they caught a second wave, and they were at least nimble enough to, okay, no problem, we'll just reshun it again. You know what I mean? there's no way we're going to make that fly. Like if the United States says, okay, we can now go off and do whatever, and then we get a second wave, there's no way that the U.S. is going to be able to stop it again. You know what I mean? They're not going to be able to, okay, go back into your houses again. That's just never going to work. It's just too big. So it's a really, really interesting situation. And what I did yesterday is I actually went through some of the plans that people were putting out there about the slow and whatever bringing back. And after doing that, as we talked about off air, is I'm actually much less optimistic than I was about some of the things I was optimistic about. I mean, I was honestly of the opinion that once the apex hit and once we started to get lower cases, I was of the belief that my kid would see actually a live, maybe wouldn't see a live school session, but it would be close. I was thinking that maybe he'd actually have his prom in the middle of June. And I was very confident that there was going to be some kind of sports before the summer. And I have to say that given the fact that, again, I looked at 5 different plans, none of them are what I wanted to see. Let's just put it that way. Because all of them seem to be really not focused in on, is just kind of like locked into this, the need to have all this, like millions of tests available between testing and tracing and tracking before anything can happen involving, groupings of people together. So I'm much less optimistic about, when I say optimistic, I don't think that there's going to be as many normal things sooner than later as I did before. I mean, I can't imagine them coming out and saying, you know what, restaurants you can now open. It's just so hard. You know what I mean? And even if they say stuff, and I guess they could do this. They could say, well, restaurants are open at half capacity or something like that. I suppose that they could try that.
Terrible idea.
But you know what this reminds me of, Bobby? You're too young to remember this. Well, maybe not. You're probably right there. It wasn't that long ago that you could go on an airplane and smoke cigarettes.
No, not just smoking cigarettes. I mean, just when my whole life growing up was traveling all the time. I probably took about 20 to 35 international flights a year. I would say somewhere in that range. And you could just walk on, like you could just go to plane. Like it wasn't like you had to be.
No, I don't mean to mean it. What I meant was you could smoke cigarettes on a plane, and what they would say is, oh, but it's no big deal because it's only in rows 12 to 18. Right. And that's that's what they did. They had smoking rows, not even considering that. Who gives a shit? It still infects the whole freaking plane. You know what I mean? So when you say, well, I really don't want to open up restaurants, but let's open it up to like half the people. I'm like, really? And then like all the people are gonna be walking in together. It's the same thing. So it's rough. So where are you on all this? Because you haven't spoken coronavirus policy in a while.
Yeah, I'm a little bit terrified about who's running the country. I don't really care. I don't want to make it overly political. I know it's a tough situation, but yesterday was particularly disturbing to watch this petulant little child, and sorry excuse for a human being. And what's really disturbing to me about it is that it's not just that people are like, okay, we just like him because we don't like the Democrats. First of all, I'm not exactly a proud Democrat at this moment either. I'm not like loving our party, but this is a whole different level. This is a human versus inhuman thing. And the type of bullying and stuff, it's no coincidence that guys like Big T and Draft Cheat and all these guys support stuff like this. They're trolls. That's what they do. And Big T included, by the way, who's a friend of mine, but has been just an absolute troll. To anybody to defend the way that he acted yesterday is beyond belief to me. And I don't feel comfortable with this man running the country. I don't think any of the decisions he made will be by trying to make the right decision for the country. It'll be trying to make the right decision for how he's portrayed and how he'll do in the next election. So he's going to have to try, and he's going to force it to reopen. My prediction, he'll force things to reopen sooner than they should. I understand that there's a lot of other people on the other side saying, you know what, we'll deal with it. We'll take the thing. I heard a number yesterday that scientists were talking about what number would be okay to where you could officially reopen the country. I guess the common thinking in that, even though it was just a made up number according to the thing, but it was where they sort of landed was 0.3%. If 0.3% of people are getting this disease and that's okay with everyone, I still think it's always better just to absolutely avoid it at all costs. I understand even if we have to shut down if you don't know how anything except for this is the most powerful virus that we've seen, how in the world are we supposed to just say, okay, well, some of you take your shots? Like, I mean, I know people have to go to work. I know things have to happen. I know we can't do this forever. But we are in a really bad spot. And part of it is because the lack of response, not just by this administration, and it was by everybody too. I mean, there was even people I like Cuomo, were too late to react. Everybody, it's not a Democrat Republican thing. It's an absolutely inhuman, incompetent, idiot, orange troll running the country, and who does nothing but defend himself and berate everyone around him and doesn't give any information. Yesterday was the only time from what I've ever seen, that I've ever seen a presidential what's it called, press conference about something so important shut down. They cut it off. They cut it off on MSNBC. And the reason they did that is because the propaganda film it reminds me of something like it's just like Hitler type of shit. It's absolutely disturbing to me, and it doesn't leave me, I have no confidence that the leagues are going to have any way of playing anytime soon. But if there was one way they could, and it would be because this man is going to force things to happen. I just don't see it happening, man. I don't see how in any real way we have any sports. I think September would be very optimistic. I don't think people understand things about viruses. Viruses are not things that just, they come and go. It's a wave, but they will come back. And unless you have a cure, and unless you're able to get everyone in the country tested, and you understand all the antibodies, and any of those things, that would be okay. If we get every person in the country tested, you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to have a league again. But not until that happens will you be able to have real sports again. Sorry, that's a rant.
Yeah, but it's I think that I still think that I was watching a podcast, not a podcast. There was a kind of a forum between Kenny Smith and Shaq and somebody else. By the way, Shaq is looking really old nowadays, by the way. But they were talking about different things that they thought could happen, whatever. And somebody was an interesting voice of reason. They said, what we'd really like is for at least, what's his name, Silver, to at least come out and say what options we're considering, and again, like, people like to have something to root for. You know what I mean? Like if
that's how bleak I think it is, though. I really think that the reason he's not is because they really don't have any options. Think about basketball. There is no way that you're going to be able to get this off. I can see it more with baseball.
Exchange he had,
I see a possibility with baseball. I can see it with golf. I can't really see it with basketball.
Where it was just.
And I don't mean the player's not willing to play. I think the players are happy to play. I just think it's absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I still have this weird feeling that, and I still follow that Bill James site where it measures the sentiment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the percentage of people who think that it's there's going to be no season at all is still at about 47%. And it's and you would have expected it to be more optimistic as things got further and further, but that's a lot of people. That's a lot, and I just think that. Here you go, man.
Well, we know that they're going to move the NBA draft because that's going to be a must, just to go to the basketball side of it. Because how can you have an NBA draft when you have no idea where anybody's finished yet? Like, you can't even know who's going to draft where.
That's true. I never thought of that. That's right.
So the NBA draft is going to be out. But then what happens? What happens? Let's just say if it really is that bleak and it goes, past the winter and into next year. How do you play the end? Let's just hypothetically play that game. Do you finish why everybody keeps saying the season will be off? They played most of the games already. Why wouldn't you pick up from where you left off, no matter what? Which is partly why myself and some other very smart friends of mine who believe that there might be a season at some point,
where it was just,
are betting on the Nets. They got 1,500 to 1 on the Nets to win the title. If this is all said and done and you're playing, you can't just I don't understand how they just give up on the season. It's not fair to the players, the teams. I understand new contracts and new things like that, but why wouldn't you just continue it? And then you just delay the start of the next season, you shorten the next season, and what you do is you play whatever you have to get the rest of the season in, which is why betting on the Nets, by the way, if you think there's going to be an NBA season coming back at some point, bet on the Nets to win the title, because you will not be getting better odds on anything in history.
Oh, so you're saying they're going to keep those wins and carry them over, and then Durant and what's his name will be back. I see.
You get Durant and Kyrie on that line on a team that's already in the playoffs. In a other than Milwaukee, a pretty questionable East at the moment. So
obviously, I would imagine that the odds, kind of adjusted for that possibility.
They didn't adjust.
Oh, really?
Well, at least as of when we did it the other day, after this whole thing happened, the next day, I got it at 1,000 to 1. My buddy got it at 1,500 to 1. My other buddy got it at, what did he bet? He bet them to go. He got 450 to 1 for them to play in the
Oh, okay.
These are ridiculous odds. Like for
I
any
gotta try
playoff
them.
team, that's worth it. But when you add arguably certainly one of the top 3 players, maybe the best player in the NBA, along with another top 10 player to a team that's already in the playoffs and has some depth, why not? Like, you know what I mean? I think that's a team that I would actually think has a legitimate chance in what I think is a much more open race. You know, yeah, there are 3 teams, but they would be the 4th team behind the Lakers, Clippers, you know, and Milwaukee. And
They already have the best player in the NBA in Karis LeVert. So
of course,
you know,
yeah, they got Karis LeVert to go along with him.
That's right. That's right.
No, and Dinwiddie. I mean, I actually like their chances a ton if the season was to play at all, depending on when it was.
Well, what do you think will happen, by the way, if they in fact cancel the NBA season?
That's what I don't understand is why would it be canceled? I understand there's some legal things that would probably be tricky to figure out, but to me it makes more sense when you've played, you know, what, 70% of the 80% of the season, almost 80%. How can you say, why would you cancel it going into next year rather than finish it? And look, like, these guys had a long break. They can play a little bit back to back. You can have only one or 2 months between seasons.
Let me ask you. Let me get to that question the other way. Then let's say they do a tournament, right? And whatever it is, they reseed everybody, do a tournament, whatever it is, somebody wins. So I guess one question is, if you had a futures bet on XYZ team and they won that tournament, do you win? Yeah, definitely. I think for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
But what if you have a bet on Milwaukee winning the Eastern Conference?
So if they did reseed it, why wouldn't they reseed it by according to conference?
So they'd have to make the finals?
Yeah. The finals they'd have to just be in the final match. Yeah, but that's the same thing as reseeding. That makes sense to me, actually.
So if you put in a bet on the Bucks winning their conference, you think that's the way sports books would handle it? They would.
I don't see how they couldn't, because I think the league would try to do whatever they could to uphold as much integrity while getting the same things that they want to do eventually thrown in there.
Right.
And at worst, I don't think you're losing the bet. I think if anything, they can call it off. And I bet it would depend on sportsbook by sportsbook. It's a really good question, actually.
I also would bet anything that there's somewhere in every sports book's rules and regulations about shit like that happening. Maybe not something exactly like this, but if for any event something gets canceled or something, I don't know. Maybe there's something.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, there's always been weird events that cause like one day.
Well, I wonder what happened. I'm sure that we could find someone to tell us what happened during that strike season in baseball. Like if you had, I guess they just returned everybody's bets, right? If you had somebody to win the World Series and there was just no World Series.
Yeah, you got to return the bet.
Right.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying is it's more likely to me that you get some sort of end in than it is that you. I mean, look, it's not going to be what we all want. But why would they start off, even if it's next year? First of all, the seasons always span through 2 years anyway, so you got one that spans through 3. Big deal. Like, you know what I mean?
You see that horse shit show or no?
Which show?
Oh, so there was like a horse competition.
What? Oh, no, I actually didn't watch it. I didn't know what you're talking about.
I didn't either. I heard it was a disaster.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it would be. I mean,
well, it's like anything else. They could have made it better, I guess, but I didn't see it.
I mean, it's weird though with horse. Like everybody's loved that idea forever, and I do think it'd be a fun all-star game thing. But if you ever watch anybody play horse who's good at basketball, you know what you're going to get? You're going to get a lot of 25 to 30 footers, a lot of mid-range jump shots. They're not going to be bouncing balls and batting off their head. They're competitive. They're competitive. It's the smartest thing you can do in horse for anybody who ever has played horse is stay in the lead. Just make sure that you're the one shooting first.
No. Let me tell you something. And I did this in my AAU teams. For me, the only way to play horse, and this is the way I played growing up, is that if you make a shot and the other guy makes it, you get a letter. That's.
I like that way. I agree with this way, but nobody I know plays this way.
This is the only way I ever played, and growing up. Otherwise, you just take these 8-10-foot bank shots, hoping to grind you into submission. It's bullshit.
It's funny because that's what my daughter and I play. Is that if I make the shot and she makes it, that's exactly what we play.
And I did it with my AAU team. I did it for expediency. I'm like, listen, this is the way the game ends, you know, in some reasonable period of time.
Yeah. No, it's that's actually a really good point, and I totally agree with that. I actually think that is the way horse should be played, and I don't know why we do it the other way.
So what about so you know what? Let's have a little more fun. Not more fun, but with less fun. But let's do coronavirus talk one more time. So, and you're the president, or you could say this to Governor of California, whichever you want. Okay, and it's up to you. What would you do right now?
if it was up to me right now, I would
Yeah.
shut everything down for as long as all the scientists told me to, even if regardless. I mean, I understand the economy. I understand all these things. The world is in bad shape though too. I mean, I'm always going to be the guy who's going to sympathize with lives over money, but that's just me. I mean, and I understand you could argue that you could end up losing. Well, I don't really think you could argue that like logically. You could end up losing more lives the other way. But I just personally think, as things are still unknown, as we're still figuring things out, just play the wait and see game. Put every single thing you have into trying to come up with a cure, with a way of testing everyone. That's what we should be doing. I don't understand this testing, why we're so far behind. Why can Germany test so many more percentage of their people than we can? You know why? Because they reacted right away. They reacted in January. That's why.
All right. So let's have some more fun. So let's just, we're just talking, like we're not running for office or anything like that. So we don't care the results. So you were just saying, just shut everything down. So let's say the scientists come to you and said, listen, I think that we could, I think that we're getting better. I don't think it's that big of a deal. There's definitely a risk of a second wave out there. But we really don't know what to do as far as the economic, what businesses you reopen. But it's up to you, Bobby. Like, what are you going to do?
So I don't know in terms of specifically exactly what businesses I would reopen, because I still understand the necessity. And I think that most work, even people who say that they don't have to,
it's anything.
Most people can work from home in some
business as usual.
Or look, not
that's
a
why
lot of people can work from home in
certain
businesses. Depends on what kind of business we're talking about, I guess. But being in an office is really, really, I mean, in my opinion, it's just dated anyway. I don't think that, I think a lot of people really can work from home. There's certain places people obviously have to go to work and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not the person, I'm not going to disagree that this is a typical situation. I just despise the man we have making the decisions. I'm not saying he hasn't made a couple good decisions. He got like 2 right, but he's been wrong about 95% of the time. And all he does is talk about the 2 he got right, which was stopping the flights. And it was also weird that, this is another thing I just want to point out. Sorry, it's really hard for me to talk about this because I get really passionate and I get very upset. But if his whole claim to, we knew how bad this is, that's why we stopped flights from China. How come we didn't do anything and all you did was talk about how it wasn't a thing for the next 2 months?
Well, hold on, Bob. You talk about revisionist history, right? Now remember where I was at, right? So my family and I were sweating this stuff like before a lot of people, because we were sweating our daughter who was in Singapore. So we were watching what was going on in Asia and all this stuff. And when Trump said, we're going to be stopping for flights in China, we just kind of figured that was going to apply to Singapore also. So we first looked at that and went, oh my God, he's shutting everything down. That isn't even what he said. He stopped foreign nationals from coming from China.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
If you lived here or whatever it is, but you happen to have been traveling all over these places, he said, come on back, bring everything. Since he issued that quote unquote travel ban from China, like 80,000 people came from China. So it's just, it was the ban on the foreign nationals. It wasn't I shut China down, like he's going to just come out and yell about, you know what I mean? So it's not that he's taking credit for something he didn't even do.
Yeah.
If you look at the actual order, it just prevented foreign nationals from coming from China to here. He didn't say anything about anybody else who was in China coming here. You know what I mean? So that's like a really, really big difference. Because that was what I was looking for. I'm like, oh my God, he's saying that you can't come from Singapore. No, just the foreign national. Okay, fine. So if Ashley needed to, she could come back. You know what I mean? So it wasn't. So you talk about revisionist history. He said, I shut down China. You know what I mean? You didn't do shit. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm with you 100% there. I want to point out just that what I find really disturbing that no one else really talks as much about. I've seen some articles more recently on this stuff, and I keep mentioning it. I talked about this incredibly high number over the past 5 months. It's been 5 now, but they had this rapid rise. And it's actually gone over the last couple of years, to be honest. That all these people have died from pneumonia more than ever in history by 1 million times over, and also other people having deaths where they didn't have an idea how to track it. So there is a chance that we're on the second wave, by the way, of this disease. I just want to throw that out there as a possibility. That maybe this is it manipulating, getting stronger. There are plenty of people who have talked about having all these symptoms back in December, January, and it would have been we couldn't get tested or anything then, so it would have been completely possible for them to have it and gone through it and either died or survived. What's really scary is the world death toll rate. And I hate the people keep saying to me, oh, we're not Italy, we're not this. Well, we're sort of rising in a very similar fashion. We're now approaching 5% in terms of the people who have died from this. That's a horrifying number. The number around the world is 9%. It's absolutely insane to me why you would open up anything when you're talking about risking the lives of 800 million people. And I'm talking about the whole world. So let's say we wipe out 9% of the whole world, 800 million people die, so we can get back our economy doesn't struggle. Fuck that. I'm not ready for this. The deaths in the US, people say, oh, it's not so bad, it's not so bad. First of all, we don't know the real numbers. And secondly, the real numbers are actually terrifying and they grow every day. It was less than 1%, it was less than 2%, and I keep pointing out every time we talk, now we're approaching 5% as of today. And that is absolutely terrifying. I have a large group of friends and family and known them forever. I'm not willing to risk to let the 10 of them die so we can all still have more money. Fuck that. I'm sorry, it's just not worth it. I would just stay as far away from letting people back outside as possible. I also have over-quarantined, like some people quarantine. I'm different. I don't even leave the house at all. And I'm in an apartment downtown LA. I don't go outside unless I have a gas mask. And I have to go, that's only for, there's a certain prescription I couldn't pick up until whatever, unless I went there and I had to go do that once. Other than that, no, don't even want to go anywhere. That's what I suggest everybody do as much as you can. If you can't, I feel for you. Just be as careful as possible. I just don't think there's any reason we should be looking at opening these things up. I don't give a fuck what it does to our economy. I wouldn't risk the entire, like, wiping out 5% or 10% or whatever it ends up being of the human race. That just seems crazy to me.
So would you consider even closing like quote unquote essential businesses as well?
Yeah. If it was me, I think that there should be an organized system. I don't know how you do it. I think it's been some time now. I mean, there should be like all the stores, that all the groceries and everything should only be delivery. Everything should have to be wiped down by people with gloves both before and after you bring them home. Like, I just think you go way over the top because there's no reason not to, like, to whatever extent is reasonable. Yes, I guess there's reasons not to, but no reason is more important than the massive loss of life. This could be worse than like something that happened with the 1918 plague. This could actually end up being worse in terms of percentage of deaths around the world. And that's crazy. Like, the technology, we're supposed to be better than this right now. So I would have everybody who could possibly be on that front trying to find the cure, trying to find anything they could to, get more respirators, make sure everybody can get tested, all these things. But until that happens, I don't want the world to be the same. If everybody was able to be tested quickly, yeah, I think it would be fine.
And also, I mean, you could test it quickly, and also, if there was some better way to manage symptoms, you know what I mean? Like whether the hydrochloric, you know what I mean, the cocktail was approved, or even if it wasn't approved, the people just took it. You know what I mean?
People did just start taking it and started dying. A lot of people have started taking that, and a lot of people died.
Yeah, I know. There's some of that.
Yeah.
So I mean, like my wife was like, you know what? If it was the flu, it'd be no big deal because you get a shot, and even the flu shot isn't 100% effective, but at least that if you got it, you could take Tamiflu and just kind of just deal with it. You know what I mean? Like if that's the difference. It's really the difference between the flu and this thing.
The thing is, you can treat it. Really, not the flu. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
The real difference too.
Yeah.
Is that whatever it's called, at least the flu you could treat in some way. You knew how to treat it, and you knew how to at least attempt to prevent it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, yeah, that's a lot of ranting about this stuff. I feel actually good kind of to get it out, but I'm not sure.
That's what I figured.
It's actually like kind of healthy. I think it's because it is aggravating, and I don't understand why. I understand it's like not wanting to scare people, and these numbers are very basic. You can Google right now, look what the death toll is, and you can do the math yourself. It's very basic. It's just surprising to me that people aren't really acknowledging how vicious this is, and not only on that, like, the people who are surviving, a lot of them are not having pleasant situations with this. And really, really bad, like people in decent health. And you can see right now, how long has it been for Cuomo? It's been what, almost 3 weeks now, and he's still having the fever, which maybe is why he's decided he went on you see his little tangent about quitting CNN?
No.
So he's totally done with, he says, I'm done with this. I don't want to talk to these idiot Democrats who won't stand up don't stand up and do the right thing. I don't want to talk to these idiotic Republicans who are all parrots and just following one idiot. Like, he's like, I'm done with it. I realize in this, I don't like my life. I don't like what I do, and I don't do anything. So I'm done. It was pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I'll tell you that Cuomo's continuing to do his thing. It's funny. He had his press conference today. It was just great every day, and it's so funny. Like it's like statistics and play, we're playing cards. You play like every hand, you feel like you're eventually gonna go broke. But he does 2 press conferences every day. He's dealing with all this variants, and every day he comes out with people feeling better after he finishes. And even today, he's like, listen, I have to tell you, this Trump thing, I'm not getting into a fight with him. It doesn't help you guys for me to get into a little baby spat with this guy. I'm trying to defend. I'm trying to get everything for New York as possible. So, people are asking me, can you believe that Trump said this? Can you believe that? Listen, that's not my concern. I won't get involved in a fight like this. I'm just trying to do the best I can for the state. And I'm like, that's exactly what you want to hear. But let me ask you this again, more, like I say, conspiracy, whatever it is. Do you think that like the governors of these states and whatever it is, and like everybody in the country that's a decision maker is basically just rolling their eyes and saying, listen, Trump, just shut the fuck up? Or they legitimately, and are they like thinking, I don't care what you say, we're going to take care of our business? Or are they like legitimately afraid they're going to have to like just do what he says?
They can't have to do what he says. There's too many things in place. The absolute authority comment that he made is just so woefully wrong.
It's just incorrect. You know what I mean? Like,
it makes no fucking sense. And so they have their own, they have enough power. I think they probably are a little bit terrified, to be honest with you, because he does have power over certain things that could really hurt us. But overall, it's just, look, I'm going to alienate myself from a lot of people with a lot of things I say anyway, but I just trust the coastal governors more than I trust anybody in the middle of America personally. And not as people, just in terms of how things are run in terms of local government. And I feel much more comfortable with Newsom and Cuomo. And look, Cuomo made mistakes too, but he made plenty of them. But
I'll tell you something interesting, Bobby. And again, you probably didn't hear this bit of business, but even within like New York, there's a little kind of like politics going on. I don't know if you saw this, but a couple of days ago, Mayor de Blasio from of New York City, he announced that that we're going to close all schools for the rest of the year. Right. And the press conference, the governor's Cuomo's press conference, so de Blasio, he says he's going to close schools the rest of the year. He's like, I don't know where he's, that's his opinion, but that comes from me, and so like even in the state level, you have like de Blasio saying one thing and Cuomo did whatever, and then people. It's funny being a good communicator.
Haven't you guys shut down schools for the year, by the way? I'm really confused by this. Why do we in California have schools shut down for the year and they don't officially in New York yet? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, they have it shut through April 30th right now. And then they're going to, they obviously have to either extend it or not. You know what I mean?
Why did we decide so low? We decided like a week after we shut them down.
Again, well, this is what I'm saying. So de Blasio tried to say, I'm shutting all city schools. But what happens is when it comes to being accredited, right, that if one's in the school in the city don't get accredited, then so that unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, that does something that has to come statewide. It can't just, each city apparently can't make their decision, which was why, again, when I was like really pissed off that Syosset, couldn't close its school district, it just wasn't a decision they were allowed to make. So it was, at least that's the story I was told. But, it's, so even in the state, there's a little of that stuff going on. But my point was that being a good communicator, an honest communicator, really just could overcome like a lot of things. Like when they said to Governor Cuomo, listen, you saw de Blasio said that he's closing them, and you're saying that it's got to come from you. How can we resolve this controversy? I just resolved it. I'm telling you, it's coming from me. And anything else? You know what I mean? And just the way he says it just makes you feel just that it's accurate and correct. You know what I mean? Like as opposed to with Trump just like all over the goddamn place, like a mixture of ignorance and arrogance is like really, really the ignorance arrogance cocktail is probably the most dangerous one there is.
I agree. You know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, right?
Who is that?
So Gary Vaynerchuk, so he's the CEO of his media company. He was an early investor in Twitter, Uber. He's 5 times New York Times bestseller. He's done a lot of, he's a great follow on Twitter. He's got millions of followers. He's a terrific guy. He did an interview that I happened to come across 2 days ago that I loved. And it was basically about how school makes no sense the way it's taught anymore. And he's right. I talk to my daughter about this all the time, They teach, school is something that at the very basic level, in the way they've learned how to teach it, they haven't really adjusted too much. It's basically memorization of information. They teach you the same things over and over again. But with the way technology has moved, it doesn't really make sense for us to be teaching these kids in the same way that they were before. So it really falls on the parents and whatever. And it's funny because like in this system, whatever, I tell my daughter all the time, look, I don't care what grade you get. If you get an F, she gets worried about grades. Don't ever worry about any things that you're great by me. I don't care. Don't even go to school, skip school if you want. I really trust her enough to make her own, to make her own decisions in terms of, like, she'll never do that. But like, anyway, if she was a different kind of kid, maybe she wouldn't. But she gets perfect straight A's and all that stuff anyway. But she's like, they're not teaching us things. They're really just telling us the same things we already knew. Things that I could easily have figured out on my own. They're not teaching you how to use your brain, basically. They're teaching you what the answers are more so than they should be. And it's a lot of memorization of that. Of course, this is not true for all schools, but I just thought it was interesting that even with the online side of things, my daughter and some of her friends have talked to me about, or, we had a Skype call the other day with her, our cousins and whatever. And they're saying that they're actually learning more because every time they get a piece of information or something they don't totally understand, they look it up and they have their thing. So they're actually in the homeschooling portion of this where they're doing the screens with the teachers and everything like that. They feel like they're actually learning more than they were beforehand. I thought that was kind of interesting, sort of how they're using technology at the same time while they're being taught to try and really understand things, which you're not allowed to do in a classroom.
There was an article written by some teachers in New York basically saying that, if you're going to make us keep doing an online thing, you got to teach it, you got to make it better or whatever it is. They're really like hammering de Blasio for the online learning program. But I mean, I actually feel for him because, you know what I mean? Like everybody's trying their best. You know what I mean? Everybody's trying their best to kind of make this work kind of on the fly. And the fact of the matter is that, part of the online learning piece is the technology aspect of it. And quite honestly, like, that's not the skill set of people in education right now. You know what I mean? So it's everybody's really, really trying, but so to hold everybody's feet to the fire, boy, this online learning stinks because it's everybody just was told to figure it out within like 5 seconds. You know what I mean? Everybody's just trying to survive to the end of the year, if you want to know the truth, and just kind of get through it. So, I always keep asking my son, how's the online learning piece, whatever it is. But he's a very bad test case because he's already like second semester senior, so he checked out a long time ago. So he's like the one that's the online thing's gonna come on. He's gonna like just dim the monitor, like look at something else right now. As far as my timeline, I just really hope, and this is, my wife is like really into it. I hope he has his prom, whatever. I could give a crap. I just would love him to go to college in the fall the way he's supposed to.
Yeah.
I really hope that he's able to get the college experience of going to a campus and enjoying college the way that I wanted him to. Fall is my kind of target point. And I think it's a little more, at least has a more realistic chance of happening than me sweating, is he going to be able to go out to parties in the next month, So I'm with you though. I think that there's that New York should close their schools. You said California did it a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think that that would be a decent idea.
Yeah. No, I think makes sense to me anyway. But I thought we could jump over and talk a little poker, just because that's what I've been doing in my time.
Yep, let's do it.
So I pulled up my poker shark scope.
Yes, there it is.
No, I'll take it, man. That's pretty good.
There it is.
At the start of the thing. Now,
the water is not warm.
There could have been quite a bit extra. Like, I mean, look, I know that everybody has those and they say that, but I literally had, a 6 final table stretch with the chip lead at one point with the last 2 tables to go and never better than 8th in any of those. So there's been some little hiccups in here that didn't quite work out, but it's been a pretty good climb all the time. I feel like I've got to sweat every day that I play. I've had some losing days, some really bad losing days, but mostly it's been trending in the right direction. And I'll take 84% ROI. I'm not going to say no to that.
Sounds good to me.
So it's going pretty good right now. We're on a pretty good little stretch. Fortunately, good games going on over here at ACR. But yeah, that's just basically what I've been at. I had a deep run on Sunday in the massive one. That was 275 for 275K for first, 840 guaranteed. It was the 450. And yeah, I think I was second in chips with 35 to go, and I ended up 30th or something like that. So it was not an ideal finish, but I did win the 88 the same day, and had a lot of really good, strong results. And in some of these games, you know, look, to me, in the $600 and better games, I think the games are pretty tough, especially late. But I think that that there's a lot of weak play in re-entry periods. So whether you're re-entering or not, I think you can get a lot. You can play it depending on however your group's playing, but I feel like it's very easy to make people wig out and just like call off, you know, 40 big blinds pre-flop with pocket fives. Whereas at the same time, I also think that you could end up getting it in like 20 times before the re-entry level, just depending on when you get in. So just something to think about. Like, I haven't re-entered in every tournament I play. There's a lot of 1Ks that I play that I don't re-enter late because I don't want to re-enter with 20 big blinds. I understand from an overall perspective, if I had like endless amounts of money and a regular job that I still had, I probably would be re-entering those even with 20 big blinds or so. But for the most part, I just am trying to be a little bit on the cautious side. So as much as these numbers have been great, you know, maybe there's even opportunity for them to get better, especially as my bankroll gets bigger for poker. It makes it obviously easier to play bigger and play a little bit more freely, which the biggest mistake, and I don't know, I would love to get Sheets' opinion on this. I was watching something the other day talking about the 5 biggest, most important things in poker. And I don't remember every one in order. I remember number 1, and I agree with it the most, especially in terms of no limit hold'em / PLO players. The most important thing at a high level to me is is fear. I think fear dictates most of the way people play, and I think that you're almost always making mistakes when you're playing with a fear-based approach. And another couple of the things were there was like natural talent was in there. I think that was like number 4 or 5. You could probably make an argument that could be higher or lower. What was another one that was good? What was, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. So it's something to do with the analytical or whatever, or working hard. I can't remember entirely. Intelligence is one that they talked about, but it wouldn't be in the top 5 for me, because I truly believe you can take, I'm not saying it may take longer, but I think you can make a lot of people good at poker who aren't very intelligent. Just sort of some general thoughts there, Sheets. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so the fear thing is goes along with a couple of the other things. Like if you've got to be able to be, so all right, let's put it another way. Like they say that like chips have value or whatever it is, and chips not necessarily equal money. Like even if you knew like how much money you were putting in there, like you've got to be able to treat these things as just chips, right? You just got to. And the way I looked at it also, like to analyze with the stock market also, like when I was, when I had just a shitload more money that I was managing then than now, but let's just say going back then when I had this lots and lots of money in management, if I actually like thought about like how much money per se was going into each trade or whatever it is, I would lose my mind, but once you reduce them to kind of like just betting interests and just little chips, then it becomes like a lot easier, and similarly to poker, that if you really just kind of think about these things in terms of chips and not the actual, forget the money, but what the money can buy. Like if you really start thinking, boy, oh boy, I'm shoving like the equivalent of like a Lamborghini in equity on this freaking bluff. You know what I mean? Like could mess with your head, but if you can just really just remember that this is just numbers and data points, you'll do a lot better. And unfortunately or fortunately, having a big enough bankroll and not to worry about the money part of it, it is important, and yes, there are people that can play well under money pressure, but it's just harder, man. It's just harder. We talked about our friend who made that, made just a shitty decision to give up equity because real life money mattered so much to him. It is a big deal, so yeah. So it's so that is really important. Now, as far as intelligence goes, intelligence is like a ridiculous metric. You know what I mean? Because there are people who are really smart at one thing and really stupid at another, and there are people. Is Jungleman intelligent? Like, for example?
Actually, I think that might be a tough example. I think he's he's probably got a very high IQ.
Right. Okay. But you know what I'm saying? But like there are people who are really good, really smart at one thing and really dumb at another, So
yeah.
Overall IQ and stuff like that, I guess it couldn't hurt. But you and I both have known just lots of people who just wouldn't be able to put a sentence together or it wouldn't even be able to add 6+8 who could get it done in poker. We've just seen it. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
Look, obviously it's a perfect world if you have the combination of good mathematical skills, good analytical skills, and a shitload of balls. You know what I mean? Like that's obviously like a dream scenario. But you can get away with, you know, having a couple of them. You know what I mean? Like it's so funny. You bring this up. I want to tell you a story about a guy who, man, I think about this guy more often than you'd think. Do you remember Lil Hold'em?
Yeah, big judges. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know him, like, you know, forever, right? And he, you know, he's no longer with us. Okay. Yeah. And for those of you that knew him, he had this whole thing going on. You know, he had a grill. He, you know, just talked like a black dude. You know what I mean? Like just one of those freaking guys. You know. And there was a guy I knew who was kind of like me, just kind of a hedge fund guy who's into poker or whatever. And he had this theory that we just kind of joked about that I bet you anything that Lil Hold'em like actually like graduated Oxford, you know what I mean? Like #1 in his class, like an English literature major. And he literally just fakes this whole thing, you know what I mean? And this whole mantra. We just kind of joke about it. And I kind of joke about it with him too. But the fact is that I do think that all poker players who are good do have some, if it's not completely quantitative understanding about what to do, at least from a feel perspective. Because like, here's a good example. Like I think use Lil Hold'em as an example. You know, I once, you know, did a hand history review with him and he was, you know, commenting along with me. I'm like, what'd you do here? What'd you do here? And there was some hand where he, you know, someone opened or whatever, and he shoved like a billion big blinds with ace king or something like that. Or not even ace king, it was something. And he says, he just can't call. You know what I mean? Like, and implicit with that is, you know, one person could say, well, ICM considerations indicate that the person you're going after has to have a folding range that manufactures probably about 80% here. But in his world, he's like, I don't know about any of that. I just know he can't fucking call. You know what I mean? Like, so you have to at least have enough an understanding to be able to do the right thing, even if maybe quantitatively you're not 100% GTO or 100% not. If I asked him what the odds were that a guy was going to fold, he would say, I don't know, 100%. I know he's folding. You know what I mean? And if I asked him, you know, you're flatting here, you know what your implied odds here? I'm like, no, I don't know, but I know I'll be able to take it away from him. You know what I mean? So yes, I think that intelligence certainly helps, but I don't think it's 100%, you know, a prerequisite for being really good.
Yes, I think that's all really well said. And actually, I think he's a really interesting example of someone who does for whatever reason have a natural feel like for the game. A lot of guys who I ran into, but I don't know about you, but like sort of felt like life had sort of beaten them up a little bit. And you know, okay, so one of my things my friends always used to tell me about my play is that I'm a non-believer. I just never believed anybody like when I first started, which by the way is a pretty good trait to have, especially if people don't know you, because they try to pick on you. Yeah. And it's really, really like being really stubborn can be helpful. But I think that some of us play with more feel and some of us play with more analytics than others. I am a little bit in between, but I would lean more like that I'm more on the feel side. Lil Hold'em would be like a 90% on the feel side. You know what I mean?
Can I tell you something interesting? Okay, yeah. So based on what you just said. So one of the things I did towards the end of my poker, right, is I worked with the Hold'em Resources guy. His name is Helmut Mercier. He developed Hold'em Resources, which was originally software that just calculated push fold, but he developed it a little further such that it could actually analyze how big of a mistake you make relative to GTO if you do fold or if you do shove, and then he extended it to whether you 3-bet, 4-bet, whatever. So I bring it up because what I would do for people is I would say, listen, send me hand histories, and I want to have 3 turbos and 3 non-turbos. That's the way I would analyze people's. And what I would do is, you know, I used to do it for a part of backing, then I would do it for PXF, then I would do it for people as a favor. What I would do is I would run their hand histories through the Hold'em Resources thing, and I would search for reduced to anything where it was 20 big blinds or less, right? I would do different things, whatever it was, and I would analyze, you know, their various folds and their various shoves, and I would be able to quantify where their mistakes were and how size the mistakes. And I would provide a video for them and say, hey, do you know what like probably the biggest leak of, and this was like almost across the board. Like if there was something that people would do worse than you would imagine, it wasn't shoving too wide. It wasn't shoving too whatever. It was actually calling all ins too tight, specifically from the big blind. So now is like, I would say.
Wait, you're saying calling too many all-ins or calling?
No, too few.
Too few all-ins.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I, you know, this is what I will say this. When I would ever do a video, I would always say the same thing. I'm saying, listen, there are a couple of rules here. Number one is that Sheets doesn't know everything, right? Second rule, though, is that although Sheets doesn't know everything, Sheets has seen probably more hand histories of different types of top players than anybody on the face of the earth, right? So I'm uniquely kind of qualified to kind of see what people do and know what works, what doesn't. And I've had reviewed hand histories of the best players in the world, from the medium to the best players, and that actual one little thing is what's the biggest leak on a percentage basis across the board, is actually people believing people too much, right? So when you say that
all-ins from the big blind or just out of position, you're saying
from the big blind specifically, because people underestimate, you know,
right,
their equity from doing that. And so, like when you say, by the way, that I tend to not believe people, that is actually like a really important trait to have, especially when calling all ins. Like, for example, like when I would like do a review of someone's hand history, I'm like, okay, so you're in the big blind, somebody shoves here. What I would say, okay, so obviously it's going to be a call because everybody thinks it's a fold. And we would like joke about my PXF reviews that, okay, what do you guys think you should call here? People say, well, I would say eights. And that we would know before we would even look at the results that it was going to be fours. You know what I mean? It's people's natural instincts were just so tight, calling from the big blind, because you know everybody wants to be the person that shoves, right? Nobody wants to be the person to call. And also people get in their heads, boy, but if I call, I have a skill edge, so I'm not going to be able to manufacture my skill edge if I.
That's part of the skill edge.
What's that?
That's the part of the skill edge. It's always the thing that drives me crazy about people playing poker.
Right.
They always say this, that, oh, you know, I have too much edge to that. I'm like, yeah, but this is part of your edge. Part of your edge is realizing that you're right here and he's wrong. You know what I mean?
This is your email when you said
this is my email to you from 2014.
You know, it's so funny because I said
I won these all these, I think, or maybe
I just recently said to and then this is an interesting thing. So when I would ask for hand histories, I would say send me something where you know you ran deep or you won, right? What people would ask me, it would say, why would you ask for the tournaments where they necessarily won? Because you know they probably just ran well to win, right? But it was more than that. It wasn't because I didn't care if they won. I just wanted as many hands as possible. so it just turns out that where they went the deepest was the amount of hands they had. I couldn't care less how they actually did. I just wanted more hands that I could run through my optimizers and just kind of look at. So it wasn't really that I was being results oriented and only looking at people's hand histories where they won. Because as I mentioned, you know, there are people that provided hand histories where they won. And I'm like, this guy's a fucking joke. You know what I mean? So it wasn't so much, it wasn't that. It was just the fact the more hands you have, the more things you have to look at. So, but again, your skill of not believing people translates over, it seems, from life too. You know what I mean? You don't believe the politicians, you don't believe, you know, whatever, and you don't believe people that are trying to bluff you. I think that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did just get in, by the way, as we're here on the phone, I did just get from ACR, my affiliate application was approved, which is nice.
Excellent.
Thanks. It's good to, even though I don't know him well, I got into a little Twitter argument with the CEO one day and didn't really know who he was, but at least knowing him helped a little bit. Cheat, is there anything, so here's one thing I always want to ask about SharkScope before we get out of here, or any of these measuring things. So what are they basing for when they're basing ability? I don't understand.
I don't know how they do that. You could probably Google that. It's so funny because I was just thinking of this. I literally haven't looked at SharkScope. I hadn't looked at it in like 8 years. Okay. The first time I looked at it in the last 8 years when you told me, oh, what's his name? Shara was trolling you. So I said, go to my SharkScope. I'm like, I didn't even know SharkScope still existed. So that's when I went to SharkScope and I pulled this up. So I don't really know what the ability thing is kind of where that kind of comes from. I obviously it has something to do with some combination of I would imagine, between ROI and profit, something in there. So again, it's certainly not a qualitative ability level. You know what I mean? It's not like saying how well you got it in or anything like that. You know, it's just I'm sure it's just a number.
Yeah. Look at there's draft sheet. He wrote me a nice message the other day though during our game, which is funny because he all of a sudden, I guess at one point we must have blocked each other on Twitter because he accepted my friend request, which I don't even know when that was from, but I know I'd rewritten back to him. But we were at the same big table on the 450, and I just wanted to see how he was doing real quick. Obviously not great.
Well, so the guy from SharkScope. This is the last thing because I have to run. But the SharkScope guy and he helped me out one time. There was a guy who this is funny. This is kind of a cool gambling story, I guess. So one of these days I'm going to do it. I just have too much respect for privacy and stuff. One of these days I'm going to go through like all these freaking thieves and like go through all the different stories, right?
Yeah.
But this is a good one. So there was a guy who was I knew him for a while. He was playing. He was losing. He wasn't like that bad a player, you know what I mean? But he just kept losing, and I didn't have any particular problem with the way he was playing, right? And whenever we talked poker, he seemed to be, let me just fix this 1 second. Didn't seem to have a problem with the way he was playing, but just after a while, I was like, it's so funny. Like when people first figured out like the UB guy, that was the UB scandal. This guy's just winning too much money. It's just not possible, right? So I thought the opposite. I'm like, listen, there's no way this guy has like 200,000 in makeup, considering that he's really just not that bad. You know what I mean? And that was my initial reason for questioning it. So because every day he would email us what his balances were, right? We'd enter him into the system, and and it wasn't like anything was any big major losses. We were just over time. It was down to. I'm like, you know what? Let me get an audit, right? So I asked him for his audit, right? And he sent me an audit, and he gave me trouble with it. He's like, I don't know if I should send it. I'm like, look, that's already a problem, right? When they won't send the audit. But I already had a relationship with Star, so I got the audit, and he had lost like zillions in like heads up sit and goes, right? And it wasn't like he was doing it illegally. Like we told him that it was okay. You know what I mean? We said, hey, you want to play heads up sit and goes? You can play heads up sit and goes. He convinced us that he was good, and that was fine. We actually watched him sweat a couple of times. We watched him play a little bit, but he lost like an incredible amount. So I went to SharkScope, and it said that his account was blocked or whatever.
Oh.
So I reached out to the guy from SharkScope. I'm like, listen, can you please do me a favor? Could you just send me this guy? I think he might be stealing. I can't put my finger on what it is. And he sent me the guy's results, and he basically lost like 150,000 to this other account, right? And so obviously it was a second account that he was doing. Right. And I looked at the stats, and it was like evil because I looked at it day by day, and it wasn't like he went like 0-10 against the guy every time he played, but literally it's like every day he was like 4 wins, 6 losses, 4 wins, 6 losses, lose 200, lose 100, 5 wins, 7 losses, whatever it is, just never had a winning day. You know what I mean? Against this guy, this other account. So it was like statistically impossible, right? that it was anything other than cheating. So of course I compiled all the data and I sent it over to him. I said, dude, send all the money back. This is also what you owe from stealing. If you have to ask, then you're like insulting my intelligence more than you did already. Yeah. And of course, the first thing is like, how dare you accuse me? Blah, 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 blah. How can you say a thing like that? Blah, blah, blah. And eventually, after a couple of like blah, blah, blahs, he's like, I'm terribly sorry. I'll get it back to you whenever I can. And he paid back maybe 1/20th of it over the.
Oh, man.
But the SharkScope guy, he pulled it up and. He's like, boy, this guy's like never beats this guy. He always has like literally like 99 out of 99 losing sessions. So the shark, whoever it was, I don't remember who he is. But
people fucking cheat, man. It's gross.
It's
by the way, just for humor, I did bring up the guy who was taunting me and just comparing our shark scopes in this last period of time.
There it is.
Look at this guy. Warm. What is he doing? He's going to go broke in no time.
The water
is negative 40-35% ROI. That's a rough one. That's tough to do.
The water is warm.
So,
I have to run.
All right, this was good. It's good talking to you, and I'll run too. But for Sheets, I'm Bobby. You guys, stay safe out there. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.